Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today I'm going to do a little update on the Kolink Stronghold PC chassis. Okay, so some of you may have caught the video I did recently, which is it's titled The Best Budget PC Case of 2018, which is the Kolink Stronghold, which is sitting behind me. Now, I've had a few questions on that already, both in messages and from the YouTube video. So I'm going to try and address some of those issues and questions now, so give you a better idea of the things I missed actually in the first video. So first of all, cooling. Now, air cooling wise, they've stated that there's 160mm of clearance for air coolers. Now, I've tested it with the Qumox 400, the Hyper 212 LED, and the Arctic Freezer 33. All of which fitted easily with about 5 or 6mm to spare between the top of the CPU cooler and the tempered glass. So large coolers aren't going to be a problem at all. Those coolers will definitely fit 100%. Now, moving on to other cooling, water cooling. Now, a couple of people have said, are you sure you can actually get a radiator in that top position? Because it is quite a narrow chassis. So what I've done is I've got a Thermaltake Water 3.0 Riing RGB set, which I've had for a long time, which I had on my other PC, so I thought, right, I'll take it out and I'll put it in the cooling and see how tight it actually is. And to be fair, looking at it, when you see where the RAM sticks are and where the actual mounts are, it doesn't look like there's going to be any clearance whatsoever. Now, I've been using some Qumox RAM, which I'll put links to in the description below, which is the cheapest I could find for the particular build. And it is quite a low profile stick, very similar to the Corsair LPX RAM, the sort of 2400, that sort of stuff, the LPX. Trying to use something like the G-Skill Trident Z RGB with its large heat spreader and fins, no chance whatsoever. With a radiator in there, it just simply won't fit. You've got probably about 2 or 3mm between the RAM stick, which is in there, the low profile, and the side of the radiator, or more so the side of the fans. So the radiator that's in there is a 25mm rad, and then you've got the 25mm for the fans, so 50mm altogether, and the RAM stick is being covered up by about 4 or 5mm at the top. So if you wanted to take your RAM out, you probably would have to remove the radiator, or at least loosen off most of the screws and kind of pivot it round so you could gain access to your memory. The same problem exists when you're trying to plug in any CPU fans if you're using a radiator or any sort of controller. The CPU header, depending where it is on my board, is right at the very top, so it's actually hidden in behind the radiator. So again, if you're very dexterous, not a problem, but otherwise you're probably going to have to take the radiator out or swing it out of the way so you can actually gain access. So radiator, 240mm, fits in there. I wouldn't say no problem whatsoever. It is very tight. Depending on the model that you choose, you may or may not have enough clearance on it, so do check out with your radiator first of all, take some measurements and see what it is. If you're not too sure and you want to send me the information for the radiator or your measurements, and I can measure it up for you, put it in the comment section below or join in on the Facebook group and you can discuss it there, and we can go through it with you. So next thing, radiator on the front. Now, I did mention in the first video that you could probably get a 360 radiator in the front. Now, that is completely wrong. Well, it's not completely wrong, but it would need some modification, and the radiator would have to be on the front of the chassis with the fans behind the chassis. Now, in that configuration, you'd only be able to use 2 fans rather than 3 on the back. So although you'd have a 360mm radiator, you'd only have 240mm worth of fans. So not the ideal situation. So I would suggest with this either 3 air-cooled fans on the front or a 240mm radiator and 2 fans instead of it. So hopefully that clears that up. Okay, so that leads me on to the last question. That is the clearance in the back for cable management. Now, I said in the previous video there's probably about 1 inch of room in the back for cable management. In actual fact, it's probably a little bit less than that, and I did actually find it quite tight when using like the 24-pin CPU connector, because the actual wire is quite thick. If it crosses over any other wires in the back when you're doing your wiring, it can cause a little bit of a bulge on the back or make it difficult to put the side panel on. And going back to the water cooling, if you've got a water cooler with a separate controller box, if the box is quite wide or quite big, normally you'd stick it on the back of the chassis, but in there you may find a little bit of difficulty actually finding somewhere to mount it, especially when you take into consideration the Velcro or double-sided sticky pads that actually hold those kind of controllers in place. Again, careful bit of wiring. I've done it with that one. I've actually put the controller into the basement because the wires were long enough so they run down the back and then into the basement, so it's not a problem at all. Although if I want to gain any access, I'm going to have to take all the back panel off, but I would have had to take the back panel off anyway to gain access, so it's not a massive deal. But anyway, hopefully that clears up some of the questions I've had on this case already. Actually, before I go, one last question. A lot of people have said, where can I get it in the US? Now, I honestly don't know at the moment is the honest answer. At the moment, it seems it's only available in the UK, Europe, etc. There's various companies in the UK, so you've got Amazon, Overclockers, AWDIT, that one always trips me up. Yeah, Overclockers, etc. You can do some searching around. There's caseking.de in Germany, I believe, and also there's other distributors in Europe. So if you're trying to get hold of one in the US, at the moment I don't think it's available, but if it does become available, I'll update the show notes and links so you can get one. But other than that, at the moment it looks like it's just the UK and Europe. So hopefully that's cleared up some of the questions already. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. That's the Kolink Stronghold, and we will catch you again in the very next video. Thanks for watching.